Hey everyone, this is Exploring Fiction, and welcome back to another video. So guys, I recently saw Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 in theaters, and now I want to rank the Mission Impossible movies, from worst to best. So, don't forget guys, this is just my ranking, and it's probably subject to change at some point, so leave your list down below. I'd really like to see what you guys have to say. But yeah, just keep in mind this list is very subjective, and honestly, I don't even know if it'll hold up the same for very long. But let's get right into it. And at number 7, Mission Impossible 2. Now, I guess recently it's become kind of a normie view for Mission Impossible 2 to be viewed as the worst one. But for me, I just put it in the last spot because it's just so forgettable. I literally barely remember anything about this movie. I know that it's very stylized in the John Woo way. I know that Ethan Hunt has long hair. And I know that it has something to do with that Chimera drug. But other than that, I think this movie is just really, really forgettable. And kind of the black sheep of the franchise. So that's why I have it at number 7. At number 6, Mission Impossible 3. Now this one and Mission Impossible 2 can kind of be flip-flopped for me, but this one I put higher because Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain is at least a little bit more memorable and menacing. And this one also kind of sets the foundation for the more modern, action-packed Mission Impossible movies, with starting out with Ethan Hunt's marriage and how that's a really big plot point moving forward in the franchise. So that's why I have it ranked above Mission Impossible 2. Now moving on to the number 5 spot, just be aware, the gap between the number 6 spot and the number 5 is enormous. Everything from here on out, I think, is a fantastic movie that's super rewatchable and super fun. But at number 5, I have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Yeah, even though this one is an absolute thrill ride from beginning to end, and there's a lot to like, I still have it ranked at number 5. So what did I like? Well, I mean, Tom Cruise is great as Ethan Hunt. Hayley Atwell is an amazing addition as Grace. She was a great addition to the cast, and I really liked her story. It really added a new dynamic to the franchise. And, of course, the action set pieces were fantastic. Now, what did I not like so much? Well, first of all, the villain, Gabriel. Not the AI villain, the entity, but Gabriel, the kind of henchman. I felt that he was really shoehorned into the movie, especially how he related to Ethan Hunt. I thought that if he was such an important figure from Ethan's past, we probably would have and should have seen at least hints to him in other movies. So it just felt like they kind of needed someone to tie into the other existing characters, and so they made up this dude from Ethan's past. So that part didn't really work for me, and also, this movie somewhat got heavy-handed with the exposition. Now, usually I barely notice when exposition is happening, or even if I do, I'm not bothered by it because it's setting the groundwork for the rest of the movie, but this movie had some very heavy-handed and awkward exposition scenes. Mainly with Cary Elway's character in the beginning when he's meeting with these other government officials. It all feels like they're rehashing things they've gone over already, or the scene is just laid out in a very awkward way, where you feel like the writers were brainstorming how to get this exposition across without straight up telling it to the audience, but it ends up feeling like that anyway. So, don't get me wrong, I love this movie, and I can't wait to go see it again, but there are just a couple gripes that keep it at the number 5 spot for me. And coming in at number 4, Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol. Now this one I still love. There are some amazing action scenes and set pieces, such as when Ethan's climbing the building. That whole scene in the Kremlin is very tense. I mean, there's stuff to love about this movie. And I think that it is one of the best movies in the franchise as far as utilizing a team. And I think this movie is where the whole team aspect of Mission Impossible really took off, and it wasn't a one-man show of Ethan Hunt's Tom Cruise. So for that reason alone, I love this movie. You know, Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, Simon Pegg as Benji Dunn, Jeremy Renner as Brandt, all and everyone else, all those characters really gel well together as a team. And this was the first movie where I really felt that. And so that's why it's ranked so highly. At number 3, Mission Impossible. The first Mission Impossible movie. Now this movie I absolutely love, and I think it's one of the most rewatchable by far. And I have it ranked this highly because somewhat because of its style. Now, while I kind of took away some credit from Mission Impossible 2 because of how stylized it is, this one I'm giving it to Mission Impossible 1, but that's just because I enjoyed it more. It almost feels neo-noir, and it feels less like an action movie, more like a thriller, and it doesn't feel like you're relying on these big action scenes to get you through. It feels like you're relying on thinking and espionage and spy thriller scenes throughout the movie to make it entertaining. So I just love... This one has some iconic scenes, of course. You know, them stealing the Nautilus, the whole train finale at the end. But I just really love the feel of this movie, how it's dark and gritty and neo-noir. And I think this one is very rewatchable. Now, I understand that some people get mad that Jim Phelps, the main character from the TV show, is the villain. And I get it. If that's why you don't like this movie as much, I completely understand. But I just think because I didn't grow up on the TV show, that's just not a big issue for me. I don't mind Jim Phelps being the villain because I'm not connected to him. But trust me, I understand if you feel that's sort of a betrayal. I get it. But for me, that doesn't bother me. And you know, this plot can kind of get confusing if you aren't paying attention, but after a couple rewatches, you really understand the fine details of it, especially in the sort of sequences where Ethan Hunt is trying to figure out who the real mole is, and he's saying one thing, but imagining another thing in his mind, and that could kind of get confusing, but I really loved how they did that. And so for me, this movie is very underrated, but it's probably one of my favorites and one of the most rewatchable in the franchise. Coming in at number 2, Mission Impossible 6, Fallout. And, you know, I've heard in certain internet spaces that this is one of the best action movies of all time. And, you know, I can't disagree. This movie is tense throughout. I mean, Henry Cavill is a great addition to the cast as kind of a foil and eventual villain toward Ethan Hunt. And there's just so much added to this movie that I loved. You know, the sequence of Ethan pretending to be John Lark when he's trying to meet up with Max's daughter, Max, the arms dealer from the first movie. You know, the final sequence when Ethan and Henry Cavill's character, I forget his name, are out battling and on the cliff with the train. You know, I liked how this whole movie concluded the Solomon Lane story as him as the villain. You know, how he had this mastermind plan. And it also involved getting revenge at Ethan for catching him in the previous movie by blowing up his wife. Or his ex-wife, I guess. But yeah, this movie is a complete thrill ride. There's so many unforgettable scenes. Alec Baldwin as the secretary is an underrated casting choice and character in the movie. But again, all the familiar team members return, and it is one of the best action films of all time, if not just the 21st century. However, it's not my favorite. And that means moving into the number 1 spot, Mission Impossible 5, Rogue Nation. And you might wonder, why is this my top film in the Mission Impossible franchise? Because honestly, Fallout might be objectively a little bit better. But let me just say, I just loved everything about this movie. I've rewatched it a million times. I think it is the best blend of high-stakes action, high-speed intensity, a gritty plot, and a great cast of characters. I mean, almost every character in this movie. Ethan Hunt, Luther, Benji, Ilsa Faust, Brandt, Alec Baldwin's character. I mean, they make such a good team, and the team chemistry in this movie is what really elevates it for me. And you're always in fear of some of the team members dying, but the fact that they don't honestly put me in a really good mood. They all survived this movie, and they all just had amazing chemistry. The villain of Solomon Lane is very chilling, more so than in Fallout, in my opinion, because he hasn't been caught yet. And he just looks the part, he acts the part. He's a very menacing villain, and they do the whole plot of a secret spy organization, but evil in the shadows, very well. They don't overplay their hand, they keep it hidden. And one thing I do like about this movie is that they didn't end up resulting in a good spy team versus bad spy team all-out brawl. Because a lot of movies that involve like covert sides in the shadows end up with this slam bang finale where it just feels out of place. Like, think of the one example I can think of is Dark Knight Rises. Now, I love that movie. I think it's a great movie, but in the end, you just have this all-out war in the streets of cops versus criminals. And that kind of feels a little out of place, at least to me. It feels like they should have kept it to the streets, to the sidelines, to the shadows. And in this one, even though there is this evil syndicate, it never devolves into this all-out war of the IMF versus the syndicate. It's very much worked in more subtle than that, and that's what I appreciate the most. Some other standout things about this movie are the whole opera scene. That was great. The whole stunt of Ethan hanging onto the taking off plane at the beginning. That's one of the more impressive stunts in this franchise. And just the final scene where they're interrogating the Prime Minister and all that stuff is happening is just fantastic. And I like how they had this plot point of, is the IMF becoming outdated? But they did it differently than, say, James Bond, where they were asking if the 00 sector was becoming outdated. And I just thought they worked everything in completely smoothly. I thought the team chemistry was the best it's ever been in the franchise. And for that reason, Rogue Nation is my #1 movie in the Mission Impossible franchise. So guys, how do you rank the Mission Impossible movies? Leave me your list below. I'd really love to hear it. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. And like always, I will see you next time.